Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
So how are you doing today? Hopefully you had a great week on all of your innovation efforts that you're working on, whether it be individual efforts or those as part of a team or as an organization, wherever you may be at. This week's show kind of got inspired by an upcoming workshop. Starting Thursday, I'm going to be doing a series of a workshop every Thursday, 90 minutes every Thursday. It's being done at the organization where I'm a CEO. And this is the 7 Immutable Laws of Innovation. So if you have not read that blog post or have not read the Fast Company article that was done about it, you can go over and find it. And I've done a bunch of shows on them over at Killer Innovations, but the actual original blog post that came out in August of 2011, right in the heyday of things absolutely going down the into the tank at Hewlett Packard. You can check that out. You can check those out over at philmckinney.com. It was originally a blog post that now has, over the last 10 years, has just blown up into something much bigger than I ever anticipated to be. So I'm getting ready to teach an updated, refreshed, entirely new version of the 7 Laws workshop starting this coming Thursday. And in the process, I'm working on just the first couple of laws. Law number 1 being the law of leadership. And while I was doing that, I was thinking, this is something that I should share with you. You've been listeners of my show. We've now been doing the show for 16 years. We now started season 17. I've been doing for this quite a while, and I think this is a topic on innovation leadership that is critically important. And what we're going to talk about today are the 9 behaviors. These are the 9 behaviors that innovation leaders need to have. If you want to be a leader in innovation leadership, these are the 9 behaviors you really need to either already exhibit or you need to work on them if you want success in the innovation leadership. So that is the topic for today's show. Before we jump into the episode, big favor to ask, can you like, follow, and share? Can you let others know about the show? Can you like it? Can you give us comments? Can you give feedback? Can you post a review wherever you get your podcast? All of that helps us spread the word about the show and helps others benefit from the work that we do here and have been doing for the last 16 years. So, and with that, let's jump into this week's episode of Killer Innovations. The characteristics that you need to be a great leader are well known, and there's leadership courses, there's people who go on to get their MBAs to learn how to be good leaders. However, when it comes to innovation leadership, if you are responsible for leading innovation efforts, or you would want to become a leader of innovation, the characteristics, the behaviors that you need to exhibit as an innovation leader are different. Now, there are some of the same basic leadership skills and those types of things. Those are the core, but there are some additional behaviors as an innovation leader that you need to have. And that is going to be the topic of today's episode. I'm going to share with you the 9 innovation leadership behaviors. Now, this 9, the core 9, actually was inspired by some articles that I've been recently reading, one notably off of Forbes, but also some from some other sites. And I've kind of collected them up as given basically a voice to what I've seen in my own career over the last 40 years of being in the innovation game, having been both an innovator, an engineer, a software leader, product development leader, to eventually becoming the CTO at Hewlett Packard, and ultimately the CEO where I'm at now, where our 100% mission each and every day for the 25 staff is to invent, create intellectual properties, create the next technologies that you and others would use day in and day out. So these 9 behaviors are ones that I think are just kind of fundamentally foundational, things that you just absolutely have to be able to do and do effectively. So to help me explain this, I've created some slides. We're going to walk through those slides, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each one of these 9 behaviors so that you kind of get the context of what it is I'm trying to say. And what I'd ask you to do is not just to watch or listen to this, listen to the 9, but to actually step back over the next week and think about 1 or 2 that you think you should focus on, things that you probably maybe aren't doing to the full level of your capabilities. And look, there is no innovation leader that's got all of this locked down. We all are working on the different things that maybe we're just naturally better at this as a leader, and we struggle with this as a leader. So these are the 9 behaviors. Now I'm going to walk through, there's a little bit of tee up here to give a little bit of context of what I think basic leadership is, and then we're going to jump into the 9 innovation leadership behaviors. So first off, let's talk about team building. This is fundamental for every leader. Every leader is put in place to build teams. And to build teams is the ability to put together the right people in order to achieve the objective. Now, the kinds of teams that you build for a specific function, if you're a software engineering leader, then you're building a team of people who've got good software skills that are complementary, whether it be learning different languages or different architectures or different platforms, someone who knows how to write mobile apps versus cloud-based systems. You're building a team based on skills and abilities. In the case of innovation, it's different. You're building people with different perspectives, different thinking styles. We'll talk about this a little bit later because it's one of the key behaviors as a leader of innovation, that you have to think differently about who you put on that team than you would if your function was finance or HR or marketing or software engineering or whatever. You're driven by the confines. In the case of innovation, you're looking for innovators, thinkers, idea people who can come up with the next great idea. Different skill set, much broader context that you have to think about it. But team building, the ability to know the right personalities to put together, absolutely critical for an innovation team leader. And the other thing I just want to put in the context here right at the beginning is, what does it mean to be a leader? Well, leaders lead. And this is a quote, and I'm not sure where I heard it from, but it's one that I use quite often. And many people on my team are probably tired of hearing it. And that is, leaders deserve the teams they get based on the worst actions they allow other team members to get away with. So if you allow someone to get away with not delivering on time, or not being respectful, not being a team player, passive aggressive tendencies, whatever that worst action is you allow anybody on your team to get away with, it will infiltrate the rest of your team, and you deserve the team you get. Now, I also want to point out that this is not about everybody else on the team. You lead as a leader. So you need to hold yourself to that same bar, if not even a higher bar of doing the right thing. Because if you get sloppy and you don't make your commitments and you have a tendency to fly off the handle or play passive aggressive in order to manipulate team members to do certain things, then you get the team you deserve. Do not complain to somebody else saying, I inherited, you got the team you deserve. So with these as kind of the fundamentals, right? You got a team build and you get the team you deserve. Two fundamentals of any leadership activity. no matter what you're responsible for. But let's jump in and talk specifically about innovation leadership. Number one, innovation leaders have a vision of the future, looking not just at the immediate success, but looking at long-term goals. This is what I refer to as innovation leaders needing to act a little schizophrenic. You got to keep the short term. You don't get a pass on, oh, you just get to think long term and these long, lofty kind of what if possible futures. You got to deliver against the operational requirements today. You got a number you got to hit, profit, margin, all of those things. At the same time, you've got to also look at the long term. So in this case, it is this responsibility to take and look at both the short term and the long term. But you have to have a vision, and you have to be able to convey that vision. You have to share that vision. You have to tell that vision. You have to create a vision that gets people excited, that they want to go for. And as an innovation leader, you own that vision. You need to have a view of what the future could be, and then bring the rest of the organization along with you. So number one, innovation leaders have a vision of the future. And number two, innovation leaders establish trust in their team. Now, when it comes to innovation, trust is absolutely paramount. Now, this trust will be reflected back on themselves, which means if you are trustworthy of your team members, they will trust you as a leader. And so that becomes absolutely critically important. But why is it so much more important in innovation than it is maybe in other areas? Trust is always important, but in innovation, I have found it to be absolutely paramount. But why? Because innovation is risky. Innovation is scary. You're asking people to take a risk. One risk, share their idea. Is their idea going to be treated appropriately, or do they get ridiculed? Or do people jump on and criticize an idea? That doesn't build trust. So you have to build that trust just to get someone to put their idea out there and ask for people to consider it. Secondarily is what happens if their idea does go forward and then it doesn't work out? Do they feel like they're going to risk their job? Are they going to get fired? Is it going to have an impact on their performance review, their pay, their bonuses, whatever? How do you build that trust? You have to build that trust, because if you don't build it, they will not take that risk. And without risk, you have no innovation team. You have no innovation effort. So an innovation leader has to establish trust in their team. And it's not just that you establish it and you forget about it. It constantly has to be reinforced, because if it's not reinforced, it's the natural tendency is to slide to distrust. So once you've achieved trust, you have to continually feed it. You got to feed it over and over and over again to remind people that there's trust. You trust them, and they in turn should reflect that back by trusting you. Number three, innovation leaders challenge the status quo. They don't rely on what's safe and comfortable, right? They're working around what that future is, and they're making the decisions accordingly. So as a result, they need to challenge the status quo, because there's kind of a status quo inside of any organization of kind of the processes that are done, the steps we take, how we do things. We've always done it this way. As an innovation leader, you're going to go and challenge that status quo. No, we're going to try something new. We're going to do this experiment. We're going to blow up the process. We can't use that process because it says it takes 3 years to do a product, and we need to do this product in a year. So we got to come up with a whole new way to build products. And so as an innovation leader, you challenge the status quo, and you challenge it again, and you challenge it again. And it's uncomfortable. And you've got to be, as the leader, you've got to convince the rest of the organization as to why this change has to happen and why it's important. But you have to be willing to, you as a leader have to be willing to take that risk. Yes, you're going to get people attacking you. They're going to think that you're off doing something crazy, whatever it is. But you have to be willing to challenge. that status quo. Number 4, innovation leaders are curious, naturally curious. They do this by asking smart, strategic, thoughtful, targeted questions to gather input so that the team can achieve its innovation goals. But the important point is not just to ask questions and then ask the next question, ask the next question. It is listening and listening carefully. If you've got a list of questions, you're out talking to users or you're talking to people within the organization, understand the problems they're facing, and you've got this list of questions. I've seen people where they ask that question, and then what happens? In their mind, they're thinking about the next question that they're going to ask. They're not listening. They're thinking about the questions that they're, the whole series, versus asking the question and then truly listening. Not thinking about anything else, not thinking about the next question, listening. Because it's that listening part. What are they telling you? What are they not telling you? What's the kind of the words between the lines that you need to pick up on? Innovators by themselves, but innovation leaders in particular have to be very, very good listeners. Why? Because that's the source for the potential of a solution, for you solving a problem, for you creating a new opportunity. Is that what is it they're telling you? What is it they're not telling you? But being very strategic on the smart, strategic, thoughtful, targeted questions, not, coming in with a question that says, what's your biggest problem that I can solve for you? Most people you ask that question to don't even recognize what the problems they have, or if they have the problems, it's something they could probably fix on their own. Why do they need you? What you need to do is find out, what do they do? What are they doing today? How do they operate? How does this work? How does that work? You need to learn about them. You have to have empathy for them, but you have to be that very clear and conscious listening mode after you ask that question. And if you ask really good questions, if you spend and invest the time to create really a great set of questions, you will be uncovering not just one idea, you probably will uncover tens, if not hundreds of ideas that you can apply your unique skill as an innovator to. And number 5, innovator leaders set aspirational goals. As an innovation leader, you're not expected just to achieve the status quo. That's not why you are in an innovation leadership role. You got selected to be in the innovation role you are in to deliver big impact, game-changing, breakthrough kinds of achievements. It's not about just help grow the revenue 3% in this next quarter. It's about how do you double the revenue in the next 24 months? How do you reduce your costs by 50%? It's the radical ideas. That's why organizations today are investing so much time and effort into forming innovation teams. And if you want to be that innovation leader, or if you are that innovation leader, then you need to set aspirational goals, challenging your team to reach higher rather than simply duplicating last year's performance. And this is achieved by giving leeway and freedom, giving your teams autonomy. I've seen many people who want to become innovation leaders who are micromanagers by nature. They want to hand out tasks to their team members and then step back and then go back and sign the next task. That is not going to achieve innovation success. If you are a micromanager, either break that habit or don't go after trying to be an innovation leader. It doesn't work. They don't go together. You need to achieve the leeway. You need to achieve success by giving your team what is those aspirational goals, and then giving them the leeway, giving them the freedom, right? I've talked many times on this show about BHAGs, bold, hairy, audacious goals. Hop over to the show notes, search for it on the website for the BHAGs. I've done a bunch of shows on this. You can go over to killerinnovations.com. Listen in on those, because I have found that when you define these aspirational goals, teams will achieve those. And these are goals far beyond what anybody thinks is even possible to achieve. People like to be on a mission. When you give people a mission that you're going to achieve something substantial, people will commit to it. Think about the BHAGs throughout history, the invention of the polio vaccine, putting Apollo 11, saving the astronauts on Apollo 13. And look, we're the benefit in what we've seen now with how fast the vaccines have been produced for COVID-19. So, set those aspirational goals. That is a key behavior for innovation leaders. Number 6, innovation leaders move quickly. This may make you feel uncomfortable. Research has found that a clear correlation between speed of execution and degree of innovation. The 10% fastest leaders were also in the top percentile of innovation effectiveness. So if you set that high goal of innovation and you drive at a very fast pace, the 10% fastest leaders were also in the top percentile of innovation effectiveness. This innovation is not about just sitting back and waiting for something magic to happen. And if it happens, it happens. If not, so no. This is about executing. There's upfront work, there's inspiration, but when you've identified that innovation effort, then it's about execution. And as I've said 1,000 times, if not 10,000 times, ideas without execution is a hobby. And I am not in the hobby business. I'm in the business of having impact from the innovation efforts that I invest my time with. And so therefore, speed of execution. If you think you're the only one that's come up with that idea that you've got, you're wrong. Many people think, oh, so-and-so stole my... No. People think that someone stole your idea. In reality, there are multiple organizations thinking and working on the exact same thing that you're thinking about. So if you want to have the impact, execution is where your competitive advantage comes from. Not in having this idea and hiding it under a bushel and waiting for the 3 years to get the patents before you talk about it with any... By that time, somebody else has probably already come out with it. So, execution. Move quickly. Do not delay. Number 7, innovation leaders crave information. We need input. We need things that we can put in and let our subconscious work on. We need input. Now, innovation leaders, right? How do we create this information? Well, by recognizing that relevant facts can drive innovation. So there's things like, I read, yes, you're going to think I'm a little bit of a nutcase, but I read PhD theses. I'm on the email list for many universities, top universities, where I get copies of PhD theses when they get published, or I get notified under Google Scholars when new PhD theses are submitted in subject areas that I'm interested in, right? Because there may be a kernel in there that all of a sudden, drives a spark. I'll reach out to the person whose thesis it is, ask them some questions, and I use it as a spark to get my innovation, my own creativity going. I have automatic alerts on Google Alerts, in Google Scholar, so that when new papers, new research studies, whatever get triggered, the PDFs automatically get sent to my mailbox for me to read. I read a lot of blogs. I read a lot of magazines. I read all the time. So for me, I crave information. And what I find is I'll read it and I go, that's interesting. And then magically, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 months down the line, all of a sudden, this spark gets lit where all of a sudden I'm connecting this thing I'm thinking about and this problem we're trying to solve in this research paper that I read. And by connecting those dots, I can feed them to the teams. They can take a look at it and determine whether or not there might be something there to help solve a particular issue or come up with a new innovation. So craving information, that is input, feeds your subconscious, that then ignites that spark that leads to the innovation. So craving information. Number 8, innovation leaders excel at teamwork. They just don't tolerate it or they do what's else. They excel at it. They put their own self-interest to the side in the interest of collaboration and group-based value creation. It's not about who is the leader and who gets the name recognition. It's not about who's, people getting credit or whose team got credit or whose organization even got credit. It is about collaboration. And one of the biggest and challenges I've seen within organizations is competition against silos. If you've got silo of organizations, org charts that are grouped around certain functions, and if there are some that maybe have a little bit of an overlap, then we end up with the headbutting. We end up with competition. We end up with a lack of collaboration. All organizations have to find a way to get beyond that, to excel at the teamwork. You have to put your own self-interest aside. If somebody else takes that idea and treats it as their own, God bless them, off to the races. That idea is going to have huge impact, right? And so in this case, this is the situation where you have to excel at teamwork. Number 9, innovation leaders value diversity and inclusion. If everybody on your team acts like you, thinks like you, has the same background as you, maybe you all went to, top-notch universities, and that's your entire team. There's a certain thinking style that comes up with that, and that has puts you into a trench. Everybody is thinking alike. Similar viewpoints leads to the danger of groupthink, where everybody thinks the same thing, everybody agrees on the same thing, everybody is going to align on a certain direction. Whereas differing experiences and opinions act as a fuel for that creative process. Diversity of your innovation team is paramount. And diversity in your innovation team could mean, people who grew up in the United States and went to college, people who never lived in the United States, people who didn't graduate from college, people who have a technical background, people who don't have a technical background, people who are even in the same industry or not in the same industry. You want as diverse of experiences and expertise as possible. What you really want are people who are willing to come up with and share the ideas they come up with. People who can just sit back and think in ways that other people don't think, and therefore come up with ideas or approaches, or can take somebody else's idea and plus it, improve it, make it much, much better. Those are the kinds of people you want. But what you also want in those same people is people who came from money, people who don't come from money, people with ethnic backgrounds, people with experiences based on where they were raised and the kind of education or work experience they have, or age. You want people across the entire age demographic. You need diversity. You need that experience. And so those are the 9 innovation leadership behaviors. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is not about that you're going to have them perfectly figured out, that you're going to be able to do all of them, and you are doing them all exactly as you would, that you think that an innovation leader should do. Look, I've been in the innovation game for 40 years. Of these 9, there's still a couple of them I struggle at. We're not all good at all of them, but as a leader, you should strive. So my ask for you for this week is to step back, review these 9, figure out the ones that you think are your real strengths, figure out the ones that are maybe you're not so strong in, and focus on those, the ones that you're not as strong on. Spend time thinking about what is it you can do this week to exhibit it again, do it again, repeat it, and work on building those areas up that you are not as strong of as a leader. And if you do that, if you focus on that on an ongoing basis, improving yourself, to make yourself a better innovation leader, it will manifest itself in your team, and your team will come up with innovations that create those next great breakthrough innovations. Thanks for joining us this week. One summary I want to give on this week's episode about the 9 behaviors. I want to reinforce the task for this week. What I would ask for you to do is to take a look at the 9 behaviors again. Either rewatch the video, hop on over to killerinnovations.com and check out the show notes where all 9 will be listed. And again, score yourself. High, medium, and low. High, yes, I've got that behavior and that's my strength. Medium is okay, I'm okay, not great, not bad. And then the lows, the ones that I definitely need to work on. Take those lows and put together an action plan. Put together a plan against each of those lows to find a way to raise those up. Because you need these 9 behaviors. If you're going to build a strong, high-impact innovation team, whether you're a CEO or you're a chief innovation officer or you want to become a manager or a leader, you need to have these 9 behaviors. So do that this week. That's your task. That is your homework. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, this came out of the work that I'm doing on the 7 laws of innovation. You may not have heard about the 7 laws of innovation. Go over to philmckinney.com, just do 7 laws, it'll come up, and there's a whole series, and you can see the original blog post from August of 2011. However, since then, and not too far after that actually, friends of mine, Brian Kramer, who used to be the CEO at Pure Matter in Silicon Valley, a digital advertising marketing firm, his firm designed 2 posters of the 7 laws. So these are nice big posters that have the 7 laws laid out. And any revenue that we get or have gotten from anybody who purchases the 7 laws posters goes to a charity that I'm chairman of the board of called Hacking Autism. HackingAutism.org gets all the revenue from the posters. If you're interested in the 7 laws, and particularly the 7 laws poster, you can hop on over to our store at innovation.tools, Tools, innovation.tools. You go over to innovation.tools, that's our Shopify store. You can get my book, you can get the card deck, Killer Questions, you can get the 7 laws posters. There's even a CD of a training program I did many, many years ago. And there's actually workshops and some other stuff that the Innovators Network has posted up there. But if you want the posters, you can go over there. There's two different designs, and you can secure that. Again, innovation.tools if you want to get it. As we wrap up this week's show, again, I would ask to help me pay it forward. The reason we started this show 16 years ago is to pay it forward from people who had coached, helped, and mentored me early in my career. And what they've asked me to do was to pay it forward in my later stages of my career. And that's my mission today, is to pay it forward. Help leaders, help others truly build up that skill, build up their confidence in being able to innovate in whatever role they play within their organization. So help me pay it forward. And you can do that by telling others about the show, posting comments and ratings of that show, or whether it be over iTunes or Google Podcast or Spotify or iHeart, or we're in all of the podcasting systems. So post a comment, post a review, or post to social media. Just tell people on social media about the show. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time this week. I know it's a lot to ask for you to give us 30, 35 minutes a week as we share this content. Hopefully you find it valuable. We value your time. Thank you very much for taking the time this week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.